Welcome to the Label Machine series, where we discuss with our guests how artists and record labels monetize music. Today, we're joined by Stevie McMinn, who is a musician, entrepreneur, and mindset coach. Is best known as the founder of Akira Records. Hopefully I'm saying that right,
Yeah.
which is an independent label launched in London in 2013. He's also a member of the dream folk band Mount Wolf, performing at major festivals like Glastonbury and South by Southwest. With over 15 years experience in roles spanning DJing, PR, live promotion, and A&R, Stevie combines industry experience with his work as a certified coach, helping others unlock their creative potential. So, Stevie, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I am super duper. This is my second recording of the day, so I'm all warmed up and ready to rock and roll, which is in contrast to the snow that is falling outside where we are here in London, which is a bit of a rarity. Where are you based at the moment?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm in South London and I went for a run earlier this morning and it was very, very cold. So it's snowing, is it? In
Yeah,
London?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe it's maybe north of the river. So yeah, for those listeners that don't know, we don't really normally get a lot of snow in London. So hence why we're talking about it. If you are from a place that snows all the time, you're probably thinking why we're making a big deal about it. But there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jumping into things, can you just give me a quick rundown on how you got started in the music industry, all the way up to this very point in time in which we're having a discussion right here?
Yeah. So I went to university in Nottingham and I studied history and American studies. And I then decided I was in a band and I just decided I'm going to give this music industry thing a real go, much to my parents' dismay. And I moved to London at the end of once I finished university, and I went to a music production college called Point Blank in Old Street, and that's where I met Bassie, who ended up being in Mount Wolf with me, and we started Mount Wolf together. And it was very much like, let's go and be in a successful band. That was the dream. And all of the rest of the stuff that's happened all sort of fell into place off the back of that. Probably because I got so obsessive about wanting to know how the music industry worked. So I kind of, and I also wanted to. It was like a necessity. I wanted to make money from music, and being an artist and trying to make a living and whilst living in London, if you don't already have parents backing you or you know a rich family or whatever, it's very, very difficult. So I ended up just doing whatever I could to try and make money, and that was DJing. I became a live promoter, did club night promoting, I did PR, worked in a bar, I did a little bit of extras work. I did whatever I could to make money, essentially. And some of that, some of that kind of need to make money kind of led to me finding out more about the music industry. Kind of throwing myself into live promotion was more because I wanted to make money, but it ended up, I ended up meeting so many interesting people. I think I've mentioned in my bio, but I worked with Ed Sheeran, Wolf Alice, years and years, all during the kind of, whilst I was starting, working as a live promoter, and meeting those kind of musicians gave me the belief that I could set up my own record label, because I just felt like I had a good ear for what was good. I actually ended up working on the X Factor, like when through the live promotion stuff, through sort of like, I think they thought that I, had a good insight into, but basically I was a scout for the X Factor. That's how I kind of ended up working for the X Factor. And then I was a music consultant for the show. So I've had various different roles within the music industry. And then I ended up setting up my record label, because I just kind of thought, I'm going to give this a go. I feel like I can back myself here. So I did that. I did that alongside playing in the band, playing in Mount Wolf. And actually, as I mentioned in my bio, but the first incarnation of Mount Wolf, we had a female singer, and she left the band the end of 2013 when It was like the height of, we had just sold out Heaven in London, which is like 1,000 people. So it was very much like
Wow.
we'd kind of reached a pinnacle, and we were kind of like riding a wave of hype, and we were about to sign major label deals and publishing deals, and we were about to go on tour with Alt J and all this kind of stuff. And it was a pretty defining moment. And then she decided to leave the band, which was completely to our surprise, and as you can imagine, was very heartbreaking and devastating. So we split up, and that's when I really threw myself into starting this record label, Akira Records. But then the band got back together again, and the rest of us guys in the band decided to keep going. And Bassi, the guy I met at music college, then became the singer. And I was kind of doing Akira and Matt Wolf simultaneously at the same time. But yeah, all of it. I mean, I know it's a very long-winded answer to your question, but all of it was just trying to make a living in the music. It was just. I basically said to my parents, "I'm going to make a living from music." And that's why I've ended up doing all these different things. It's because I want to make a living from music, and it's a challenge to do so.
It is a challenge to do so, and especially I think as a solo, just doing it purely via music only is super difficult. Which is why I think it's super smart what you've done is to figure out the whole business side of it as well, and then that in turn leads you to find ways that you can make money in other aspects of the music industry that isn't just from music royalties. So, keeping on the theme of music royalties and making money, with the label, how are you finding what's the primary ways that the music artists that you're signing are generating income today? And has that changed much over the last 10 years?
I would say the primary is still streaming, but when we first started the record label in 2013, it wasn't until probably about 3 years in that I actually started really making money, like properly, and that was almost exclusively from streaming. Whereas now there's various different income, streams. There's streaming, there's physical, selling merch. We've actually got more and more into live. Like we're helping the artists to sell tickets, and we've set up a separate arm to the business called Akira Live, where we're also working with artists who aren't necessarily signed to the label. So that was kind of like we've adapted to the changes in the music industry, and like it's not as easy to. When I first started the label, you could break artists without really having that much investment in a way. Like that was how I was able to start the record label. I was doing the PR for the artist myself, and it was something called Hype Machine, which I've talked about on TikTok, but it was like an aggregator for all the most popular music in the world, which you had to be on certain blogs first of all to end up in the Hype Machine charts. And it was like Hilly Dilly was a big one, Indie Shuffle, Ear Milk. There was a bunch of different blogs, and I'd kind of worked out that if you got all three of these blogs, like the three that I mentioned plus a few others, in a certain period of time, then you would end up in the Hype Machine charts. And then it was like a popular vote at that point, kind of a bit like TikTok. So the tastemakers had already sort of decided, and then it was like a popular vote, and then the more sort of hearts you got, the more you'd like rise up the Hype Machine charts. And there was a ton of artists who came through at that point. 1975, Oh Wonder, there was The Weeknd. I mean, there was tons of different artists who broke through Hype Machine, and I'd kind of discovered like, okay, if I just work out this Hype Machine thing, then this is how I can. And so Foria, who were my first signing, and we still work with them today, they got to number 2 on the Hype Machine charts, and they basically went from zero. It was the first ever song that they ever released, and it went from like 0 streams on SoundCloud to like 500,000 streams within like a week or something.
Wow.
And then once you kind of created that hype on Hype Machine and with the blogs, like this is the same with Matt Wolf. That was how we first started selling out shows and built a fan base. I then realized that some of the songs that, like with Foria in particular, were getting millions of streams on Spotify, and it wasn't necessarily correlating to what had done well on Hype Machine. So I was a bit like, well, what's going on here? And I kind of figured out that it was because of Spotify playlists. And this sounds really obvious now in hindsight, but the rest of the music industry hadn't really figured this out at the time. This was like 2014, I think. So I then very much through my kind of hustler mentality through Hype Machine and trying to discover like the various different like ways that you could get in front of an audience. And also when I was doing the PR for the artist, I would find people's email addresses and test them on like Gmail to see if they were working. You know, you'd find out someone's name and then it'd be like, say Chad at hillydilly.com. You kind of find out like, you know, what the email address, hillydilly.com. And then I'd try various different versions of his name until the email address worked. And then, you know, I then had a relationship. And, you know, I did the same thing with Spotify. I found out who the editorial people were on LinkedIn. And like, there was a couple of mates who were doing the same thing. And we all sort of chatted and we found out who these, you know, who these people were, the people who were, and two of them, Meg Tarquinio and John Stein, who I think they were based in the US. I think they were the two biggest, most influential tastemakers in the music industry between 2015 and 2018. And I had like a personal relationship with them. You know, I sent them music and I was like, I'm in Mount Wolf, and they liked Mount Wolf. And then basically everything that I sent them, you know, it had to be good. Like you know, they weren't just doing me favors. Like it had to be good, everything I was sending them. And I knew that it had to fit the playlist that they were, you know, curating. Like Meg was very much folk and John Stein started chill vibes, which is now, you know, a big Spotify playlist. So I knew that like the music I sent them, I couldn't send like a metal band, you know, that wouldn't have worked. So, but it was very much my taste of music anyway. It was all kind of a bit like Mount Wolf, which is kind of like ethereal, slightly electronic, slightly acoustic, slightly indie, you know. And that was what all of the artists on Akira were at that point. And it all sort of fit within that, you know, playlist infrastructure. So yeah, I just used to send the music and it was very little investment. I mean, I was doing the PR for artists at the beginning, and then we started paying other PR people. We wouldn't often do radio because there was no point, because we just knew that, you know, they weren't going to get any radio play. So it was pretty much sending John and Meg and various other people that I found, you know, emails, pitching that music to them, and then just it was added to those playlists. And, you know, there was an artist called Henry Jameson in 2016 who was an acoustic artist, and he got 3 million streams in the first week, because me and his manager had like good relationships with the you know, curators at Spotify. And then you know, Apple Music as well, I kind of figured out who the people were there and did the same thing. And pretty much Spotify and Apple Music were the big ones. Like they were the only, you know, they were the biggest focus. But there was a point in time when Akira, my startup label, which I started from my bedroom, was getting more streams than like major label artists who were on the BBC Sound Poll. It was like this crazy moment in time where I don't think the rest of the music industry had really appreciated how valuable Spotify was. And I was in there as a small boutique record label, like, you know, speaking to these people regularly. And I don't even know if the majors were at that point. Obviously, once the major labels figured it all out, Spotify sort of grew as a company and became more and more corporate, and they sort of like closed the door a little bit. And now, like, because of the deals that the majors have done with Spotify, not to get too political about it, but they have first access now, pretty much. Like, they can be pretty dominant in terms of, but this hadn't really happened. So there was like a moment in time, which in hindsight was kind of lucky, you know, like, but I always think that luck is, I saw a quote where it was like, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. So I think you've got to figure out the opportunity. You've got to be aware of the opportunity in order to be lucky. And then, but yeah, like it was kind of mad. Like, I don't know if there's another moment in history where like you know, a guy in his bedroom could have set up a label and basically had that much success without any financial backing. Like, it was kind of like a moment in time, and that's how we started the label, and that's how, you know, the label has now become my full-time job. You know, Mount Wolf, I still have an income, like we get royalties every 6 months, and they're decent enough, but nowhere near enough to live in London. And like, you know, I've got a mortgage now, and I'm married and stuff. Like, you know, I'm in my 30s. Like, you know, and I want to start a family and all the rest of it. Like, you need to have a proper job, and like that's what Akira is now. And I never really anticipated that happening. Like when I started the label, it was like a bit of a passion project. It was just like, well, let's just give this a go. It was just off the back of working the X Factor, and you know, I'd already worked with like Wolf Alice and Ed Sheeran in years and years, and seeing acts go after working with them, like go and get really, really big. And I kind of thought, okay, I you know, back myself in kind of like having a feeling of what's going to do well. So that's essentially why I started it. Yeah. I can't actually remember what your initial question was. I've kind of just gone off on a tangent there, but
No, it's great. I mean, you're just triggering off. There's so much to unpack there. Where did I even just want to start? I want to comment on luck. I think, you know, I did a little piece the other day about luck, and that it is one of the things that people don't attribute success to enough in creative industries, because if you're selling widgets or something that has a clear problem and solution, that's an easier path to create a viable company or have some success. But with creative industries, where so much is reliant on cultural shifts and what people are liking or not liking, you know, you can line everything up and just, for whatever reason, people don't like it, and that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's so much of it is just luck, being in the right place at the right time. And I think that's why when people, artists, say, you know, you just got to keep at it and you just never give up, because by not giving up, your length of time staying involved increases your chance of having some success, basically increasing your chances of luck. And so that's, I think, a positive thing as well, because it means, you know, it's not just about like, make sure you've got great music. You have to have that, and doing A, B, and C. It is just really making sure you stay in the game. And like you said, you know, look for those opportunities and be ready for them as well. I'm on a bit of a, like, you know, luck is something we shouldn't discount as much. And also be careful to have, I've fallen into the trap where I was in the right place at the right time. Like, it was luck with a particular, you know, genre of music that was blowing up, and to think, oh, it was all my great thinking and our great thinking and what we did that was what the success was. It was like, no, like it could have been anybody in your position. You were just the one that was there, and you basically just didn't cock it up. Like, you just didn't make any major mistakes, and that's how you had a whole lot of success. And you know, I think that's worth bearing in mind as well. But going back to, you were saying, you know, like it was a lot easier to break those artists. You had the, you know, the foresight to realize what was going on with Spotify playlists before anybody else, which you really used to your advantage, which was super clever. Going to today now, you know, if I'm listening in, what would you say is the cost of breaking an artist today? If you can't just use your own time and talents to kind of break them?
well, I think the big opportunity right now, and I've spoken about this on TikTok, is TikTok. So a lot of I said this on TikTok. It's kind of made the rest of the music industry lazy, because the artists are doing all of the work for them. So a lot of labels and music industry professionals aren't really breaking artists themselves. They're just waiting to see what blows up on TikTok, and then deciding to then use their leverage, you know, if they work at a major or if they're a big management company, to then jump on those artists. And then, like, I always talk about this idea of going from 0 to 60 miles an hour as an artist. Like, they're jumping on artists who are already going at 60 miles an hour. But that's a lot easier to then, you know, all make money, rather than trying to get an artist from 0 to 60. And if you're actually trying to break an artist, like what we used to do, and we have a track record of doing, right now it's like you have to tell artists to get on TikTok, which, you know, I think even I felt a bit uncomfortable doing that at the beginning, but it's now just a thing where like it's taken over the music industry to such an extent that like we're all just in denial. If an artist is not prepared to do it, then it's just like, well, why are any of us trying to do this? As in, like, you have, like, we talk about luck. You have to try and make your own luck in life, and there are always certain opportunities. And it's like when I talked about preparation meeting opportunity, you have to take advantage of the opportunities that are presenting themselves in that period of time. And the big one right now is TikTok. But it's not just like, as a label, we're not just like, get on TikTok. I mean, that's part of it. We're also doing digital advertising. We're trying to help artists sell tickets. We're actively spending lots of money in order to break these artists. So it's very different. Like from the money that we've made from streaming and like the catalog that we have of artists, we're now investing quite a bit of money into breaking new artists, and it's an incremental process. Like unless something goes viral on TikTok, then you just, it's very incremental. It takes time. It takes years to break an artist, I would say now. Like whereas when I first started the record label, things could happen almost overnight. So it's just a much slower. As I say, unless something goes viral on TikTok, it's a much slower process in breaking an artist now.
What would you say to artists that say, I just want to be a music artist? Like, I don't want to have to be a creator. Why do I have to be a creator? The industry's broken. What do you say to artists with that viewpoint?
I've had this conversation quite a few times with artists over the years, as in artists I've worked with. And it's like, well, there's a difference between being an artist who like just writes music and that's rewarding enough for you as an artist just to write the music, just to release it. If you have ambitions to make money from music, then you have to have a business head. Like you have to, I know this from being in Mount Wolf. Like you have to, like I was even with Mount Wolf, like trying to get us to make our songs more playlistable at the time, if that makes any sense. Like I wanted to try and change some of the singles, as in like we kind of went in this kind of like post-rock, Sigur Rós kind of way. And like the other guys in the band would often just be like, well, let's just, whatever comes out, let's just be very cathartic about this process. And I was just like, well, if we cut out the first minute where there's no singing, like there's more likely that this song's actually going to do something. Because I had like a real A&R kind of brain, and like, so yeah, if you want to make, there's a balance between art and commerce. And I think it's the same for all artists. Like my wife is a jeweler, her parents are both artists. Like I have this conversation with them, and this is outside of music, and some people are just happy making the art and they don't care too much about making money. But if an artist says to me what you've just said, then I'm like, well, how ambitious are you? How much, like, how important is making money from this for you? And if it's important that if you want to make money from it, then you have to do certain things. Like that's just, it is what it is. Like you have to be real about it,
I don't think it's even necessarily making money. It's like, what do you want to do? I want to play in stadiums. Well, you're not only way you're going to get to play in stadiums. Well, as you do have to have, you're eventually going to make money to invest in yourself, but you're going to have to get involved. I think there's a couple of things as well. You were saying about how TikTok is making the music industry lazy and making artists work for themselves. They're already going at 60 kilometers an hour. They're looking for a fire that's already burning and they want to put petrol on it. But I have to say that I think that was always the way, and the medium is just changing, and that's what you need to recognize. So 30, 40 years ago, artists would go out and play gigs. They might play to like small backroom bars to 3 or 4 people, and they did the grind, and you had to do that. That was the medium, right? So like, for what the reason why I asked you to see what your perspective is mine is like, look, if you do want, like exactly like you said, if you're just doing it for its for putting music out, you don't necessarily need to make money or fame or anything like that. That's fine. But if you have it as where you want it to be something and major and as a career in your life, well, then you've got to put yourself out there. Like performers would go out and perform. And in some ways, you don't now have to leave your studio. You can go and perform and record. You don't have to go to this shitty backstage bar, like on a rainy night and cold. Like you can just do it. Like it's a better opportunity now. Like you shouldn't be complaining. You should be embracing it. That's yeah, probably similar to you. Like that's my kind of like take on it with the artists. So, roughly, like if you're able to share, if you're looking to, you're saying breaking an artist, how much are you looking to roughly spend nowadays in, I mean, we'll do it in pounds because you're based in the UK, to get an artist in which you'd be hoping that within 24 months, you'd be breaking even with their streaming sales. And let's say you're taking on an artist that they're going to be playing out live, and you're going to be looking after that, because I really think moving forward, if you don't have live, it's extremely difficult to make a living in the music industry. So yeah, if you can talk me through what that might look like for you guys at the moment.
Well, it's slightly changed, and this is why we've built a separate live company, and we're looking to do more sort of holistic deals with artists, where if we are going to essentially sell out shows for them through our marketing, then like we've created deals where we take a cut of the live. We're either the promoter or we're sort of cut into the live somehow, and also merch. So it's like what I keep saying to people, like we're sort of becoming an artist development company rather than just a label. And it's like what I keep saying, it's like an ethical 360 model. We don't take a cut of publishing or anything, but like we are happy to work with an artist right from the ground up. So I think we are quite uniquely positioned as a label or artist development company. Whereas I'd say the rest of the music industry is what I've already said, like jumping on stuff that's already gone viral. So for us, it's like, we just, I think in a way, like there's an opportunity to work with like real talent, like exceptional talent. Like there's an artist called Jasmine Jethwa who's on Akira, and there's an artist called Leith who we're currently working with, and they would have been signed to major labels. And also there's a band called Modern Love. Like there's a bunch of artists that we're currently working with who definitely would have been signed to major labels when I first started, but because the rest of the music industry is now so focused on numbers, like rather than music, for us, there's almost an opportunity to work with these exceptionally talented artists who don't already have the numbers. Like, so for us, it's like, it's going back to basics. And it's like, I think what you said, to an extent, there very much major labels have always operated in this kind of jumping on a fire. Like, a band like Coldplay, I think they were already selling out shows and that kind of stuff. And then they got a lot of major label interest. Whereas, a band like Oasis, because I watched that Creation Records documentary, Alan McGee, I think his name is.
Yeah, Alan McGee.
He just discovered them at King Tut's in Glasgow. Like they just happened to be playing that night. And like they didn't really, they were playing a few shows, but like they hadn't really started a fire or anything. And he kind of took a bet on them. And, back in the 90s, it was like, if you got certain, like John Peel, if you got certain tastemakers on board, from straight away, I think it was a similar thing with the Smiths. Like they kind of started from nothing, but then they started getting played by John Peel, and almost, or you'd get like, NME or whatever it was at the time. As soon as you got this kind of press and radio, then you could go from basically 0 to 60. And it was similar for me when I started the label. It was like, but the tastemakers at the time was Spotify, rather than being like a John Peel. It was like a person that the rest of the music industry or artists didn't really know, John Stein and Meg Tarquinio were effectively John Peel at that point. They were like the most important tastemakers. So yeah, and I've talked about this on TikTok, but there isn't really tastemakers don't seem to have the same power that they used to. So right now, I think you have to kind of start. You have to go straight to fans, and the way of going sort of straight to fans is TikTok, built, or social media in general. Like we keep talking about TikTok, but it's like Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, like all those three. I mean, some people do it on other platforms as well, like Twitch or whatever. It's like going straight to fans, or like digital advertising. So yeah, we now invest money into. We did a bit of influencer kind of campaigns and stuff on TikTok, but it's a bit of a lottery in terms of investing your money into that, and that's what major labels do. But if you're like a small boutique label, it's not as measurable. And you don't get as much sort of return on investment. Whereas we've now set up, we do like ads, and we sell out shows, and then because we're selling out the shows and we're creating a fan base, we've now got a cut into their live and their merch, so we're able to make the money back that we're investing. So back to your question, because of this new model that we have, within like 12 months, if the artist is up for touring, that's like a very, very important aspect of this model, whereas not every artist is up for touring. I know that sounds like a given, but it's not, because I've worked with many artists who don't really want to tour. If they're up for touring, within 12 months, we can basically make our money back. And then on the we've also got like a traditional, streaming, like master document and agreement with the artist, but it does take a lot longer to recoup on that side. Can take years to recoup on that side. Just a traditional kind of record label.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying about the tastemakers, because that for you as well, that was like dropping into that. You use the Oasis, them dropping into John Peel, and that being part of the success. And for us as well, when we set up Never Say Die, it was the time which UKF, which was the big bass music channel. I think the second or third track he ever uploaded was one of the ones from our label, and we just reached out to him, and he was this young, like 17-year-old who was like, "Oh wow, you guys are really cool. Yeah, I'm happy to work with you." Pretty much every single tune we sent to him, he'd upload, and so then we had like hundreds of thousands, because he had hundreds of thousands of subscribers, just listening to the music, and then we just sent them to Beatport, and then the tracks went into Beatport, and then the A&R guys were watching those, or the agents were watching those to see which ones they should be booking for shows. So we very quickly, within a couple of years, did, I think, a similar thing to you. We set up a management company, because we were like, if you can be nobody, but you've got a great EP. If you release on our label, you will get live gigs. Like, you will instantly start being able to be booked for £500-600 a show. And so we were like, well, we should be able to be part of that. Part of their income as well. So we did it. We set up a management company, because alongside that, the other reason as well is the artists were, they didn't have a Facebook page, or they didn't have even a logo set up, and just, press pics, loads of basic stuff that they needed helping with. And so we were doing that as part of the label, and an old music manager was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you're doing, music management." And we were like, "Oh, we're not." And they're like, "Oh, I spoke to one of the artists, and you're doing all this kind of stuff for them." And we were like, "Yeah, isn't that what all labels do?" And he was like, "No, that's what managers do. Like, you should get paid for that." And then we were like, and sort of because of all those reasons, we sort of thought, well, we should start a management company to do that, because it just made sense. And it's what I always say to labels, that one of the first things you should do outside just releasing music is set up a management arm and start developing your artists, and especially signing artists that want to go out and play live. Like you said, it doesn't have to be exclusively, but within 12 months you can reap your money back, which is really, which means you've got a business model there as well. Another thing I wanted to touch on is A&Ring. like, I work with a lot of record labels, and they're like, how can we increase our revenue and whatnot? And I really, something I don't sort of talk about or focus as much is because I'm sort of, I guess, more focused on the business side, um, but getting, once the music's done and made, and like, right, how do we kind of take that and monetize it? Whereas speaking to you, I believe that, getting the right music in the first place and signing the right labels is probably like half the battle. And once you've got that right, the sort of the monetization stuff becomes a lot easier. Like, yeah, can you, like, I guess, talk to me like about your personal opinion on A&Ring, and also how you go out and find, bands these days, that are ones that would have been signed to a major, but yeah, they don't have these numbers these days.
So I'd say it's changed in the time that I've been running Akira. And I've talked about this on TikTok as well, but when I first started the label, it was very much music. That was the only thing that I cared about, which kind of sounds very like pure, but it's true. Like, if I heard a good song, it was often on the blogs because I was going on Hype Machine every day, and I was also, I was a live promoter. So I'd mentioned I'd worked with like Wolf Alice and Ed Sheeran and people like that. So I was also discovering artists, like, I say organically, but like through gigs in London. So I was young as well. And I was in Mount Wolf. I was very much on the pulse. I just do think there were less artists around then, like less good artists around then, or less artists that people were talking about. Anyway, so kind of a lot of it was word of mouth. It was like, lots of friends in the music industry would often send me stuff. I would find it because I would book the artist myself, or I would find it on the blogs. And so yeah, when I first, I worked with Henry Jameson, who was American, Rosie Carney, who was from Ireland, Yost, who was Australian, Lin Ying, who was from Singapore. Like, I signed a bunch of stuff that, like, Ghosty Kisses from Canada, a bunch of stuff on the label, which, like, it didn't matter where they were based around the world. I was just discovering their music on the blogs, or at a point I was discovering music on Spotify as well. And I just thought, okay, well, this is really good. I know that if I send it to my tastemaker friends at Spotify, I'm gonna be able to get millions of streams or whatever. So that was kind of like the thing that I was very much doing back then. Whereas now, unfortunately, and I've said this on TikTok, but unfortunately, music is only one part of it now. Like, the music has to be really good, and I still really, really believe that. Like, I'm still won't compromise on the quality of music, but the artist has to want to tour. They have to have a real work ethic. They have to want to do socials. Like, I think a lot of it's around mentality as well now. It's not just around, like, I want to meet the artist. I want to sit, if they've got managers, I want to sit down and kind of, before we even begin to work with an artist, it's almost like getting into a relationship with somebody. Like, you kind of like, I think now it's for us.
Well, it's a business partnership.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You really want to know that you're going to work well together. You kind of talk about how you work. You kind of make sure that expectations are aligned. Make sure that they're really ambitious. Because this is another thing as well. Like, I've run the label for 11 years now, and sometimes I've signed artists based on music, and they just didn't really want it enough. Like, and I felt like I wanted it more than them, and I was like, well, this isn't. So I'm very much like making sure that the artists are very, very ambitious. They're prepared to do the work and all that kind of stuff, as well as having great music. So that's kind of, and in terms of how we find the artists, a lot of it's like similar. There's not really, I don't think blogs are as important now. So a lot of it's probably, through Spotify, word of mouth. And then at different times, I've had A&R people work for me. I've had like young scouts who I've met who, I pay a retainer and they send me music. So One of the guys who was doing that is now the label manager. Actually, he's kind of like he went from A&R to label manager. So he discovered like Modern Love and Jasmine Jethro, who are on the label now.
Oh,
And
wow.
so yeah, so I've gone from I started the label on my own, as I said, in my bedroom. So it was me on my own. So I had to do everything. Whereas now I have a team of people who work with me. So you know, I'll have people sending me music and stuff now. So it's kind of a bit different to what it was.
But I guess it just does highlight, you still, as the CEO of the company and understanding the vision, you've got to be looking for good music, and you hire people to literally do that because that you understand
Hmm.
how important it is to sign, great music to the label. Um, you were talking about a bit of the mindset stuff as well, with the artists, how would you well, how does it, or how important is it to have a strong mindset to contribute towards navigating the business side of the music industry?
Um, I used to believe this anyway, that a mindset is everything, but I now believe that even more because I've become a coach as well. And it's like there's so many challenges in the music industry. You need to have a lot of resilience to have to deal with it. Overcome fear of rejection. There's all the kind of stuff that, like within the coaching, I became a certified coach. All of the different things that you will coach people on: imposter syndrome, fear of rejection. All those kind of things. You need to be, as an artist in the music industry, you deal with all of those. Anxiety. You deal with all of those things. Sorry, that I just heard a news thing go in my earbud. I don't know if that came through.
No,
Um,
no, it didn't come through for me.
oh,
It's all
you can
right.
edit that bit out. Uh, what was I going to say? It kind of threw me off. Yeah, all of those things that I've just mentioned. Anxiety, imposter syndrome, fear of rejection. Building resilience. Like, I think you need all of those to be an artist in the music industry. And it will come. Like you can't you don't need it straight away. But it really helps to just not care what people think. And have a vision and work towards that vision. And in coaching, we talk about like manifesting and not just kind of having a vision and then just hoping that it happens. It's like having a vision and then visualizing all the steps in order to make that vision a reality. And that's essentially what I did with my record label when I first started. I very much had a vision from the off. I kind of always did manifest to a certain extent. I knew where I wanted to go. And that gave me a real drive to get up every day and show up, even when I wasn't making any money. Like there's a lot of graft that you have to do in the music industry, in any, whether you're an artist or whether you're a professional. You have to graft for a
Mm.
long time before you make any money. So you've got to have unwavering belief in yourself or in the project that you're working with a lot of the time. And so that's obviously mindset. And you have to have this kind of unwavering belief in spite of the adversity that you are definitely going to encounter. So yeah, I think
Mm.
mindset is so important. Um,
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, I was just thinking, what's really interesting is the new, like, Generation Z are, I think the main job that people want now leaving is they want to be content creators. And which is, to some degree, so you've got to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be a content creator, very much like a musician. So you have to have an extremely strong mindset. You're going to have to graft and graft and graft, get up in the morning. There is, what I was just thinking is, but there is also, you can have no, um, no desire for entitlement or have any of
mm,
that at
mm,
all. Yet and I could be wrong, but I do get the feeling that there is a feeling of that in that generation, that they sort of should just be given stuff. And I'm thinking, I wonder if there's, I wonder if this is going to either turn out good or turn out bad, because they're two very opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to being a success. But then maybe there's an opportunity there as well, and really making people understand about having that right mindset as well. So just talking about as well, you're doing your mindset coaching. Like, are you predominantly working with music artists, or you with business entrepreneurs? Are you sort of with everybody? And like, and also if like someone wants to work with you, how do you go about it and things like that?
Yeah, so the reason why I got into it is because I was coached myself. I didn't really know what coaching was. I was coached myself by somebody at the end of last year, and I just found it fascinating. I mean, I loved just kind of sitting, almost like what we're doing right now, sitting down for an hour and just reflecting on where you've come from, where you're going, that sort of thing, and just having these big conversations. I felt like there was so much more clarity in my thinking because of it. And I would say, like, I always say it was transformational, but I really do think it was, because that clarity in my thinking helped me decide what I wanted to do next. And part of that was like, okay, I want to do this myself. Like, I feel like I've got a lot to offer, not just the artists that I work with on the record label, but I want to help just artists in general, because I've been there myself. I've been an artist. I've been in Mount Wolf. A lot of the things that people are experiencing, I've probably experienced already myself. So yeah, I think a lot of the people who I'm coaching are within the music industry, and that's kind of where I want to. That's where I want to be, and that's where I want to go. But I also, just put it out on Facebook when I first started that I was starting coaching, and I was doing taster sessions, and I still am doing taster sessions. And so all sorts of people got in contact with me, people that I hadn't spoken to in a number of years, and then also like word of mouth, like a few other people got in touch with me, and like it was other people's friends and stuff. So I've coached a whole range of different people. It's like lawyers, people who work for the NHS, entrepreneurs, and then a lot of it, as I say, is people within the music industry. But it's interesting because a lot of people in general share, no matter what industry you're working with, they have similar challenges, particularly around mindset. They have similar challenges and similar things that they have to overcome. So it doesn't matter too much what industry somebody is in. If you're a coach, like, this is one of the things you learn on the course, is that you believe that the person you're speaking to has all the answers already. You're just there to kind of facilitate and kind of reflect and ask questions and help them. What I talk about clarity, like come up with that clarity in thinking. And so, yeah, you don't necessarily need to be an expert in what that person's industry is, but the reason why I want to focus on the music industry and like coach artists is because I feel like I do have a certain level of expertise, and that does help the process. I think I can very much relate as well. And I think sometimes artists like that, when they know that someone's already been there and that kind of thing. So yeah, I can't remember what your initial question was, but I think I've answered it.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing about, working with music artists is, if you love music, you're just into music. It's very hard to just go, oh, that's just a part of my life and I've moved on. It's not like a job where you're like, I'm over that now. It was a way to make money. I attempted to move out of music industry about 5 years ago and move into film, which I now spend my time equally between music and film. And I thought I was just going to go 100% into film. But I just love music so much. I love music artists. I love the process. I love the challenge. And I've realized that that's just going to be a part of my life until I'm dead. Yeah, anything I do, I'm always like, well, how can I do this in the music scene as well? Just quickly, what is a taster session?
Yeah, good question. A taster session is basically like a free sort of hour, like a complimentary session with somebody to kind of give them an idea of what coaching is before, and then they decide whether they want to work with me in a pay capacity after that. So it's there's a lot of, when you're a coach, you do discovery calls with people, which is kind of, it's like a shorter half an hour call just to see if you want to work with each other, essentially. And I've kind of just extended that, and I've just created like taster sessions. So someone can work with me for an hour, and then we both decide whether we want to work together going forward.
Gotcha. If someone wanted to book a taster session with you, where do they go?
Good question. Send me an email. So I've got my email on TikTok, but my email address is stevie@akirarecords.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll put those in the show notes as well. What would you say? How we got? Okay, we've got a couple more minutes. Okay, actually, I'm going to go with. This is one question I like to ask everybody. I'm going to paint a situation for you, and then you're going to sort of answer the question around it. You've got a $3,000, £3,000 budget to promote a release from a self-releasing artist on their own record label. They've got roughly 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. This is the third release that they're doing. Their combined social media audience is around 25,000, and about 10,000 of those are on TikTok, and the rest are on Instagram and YouTube. The catch is that they're a non-performing artist. They just make very catchy bedroom kind of pop music. How would you go about spending your budget to grow their fans and to monetize their music in 2020 or 2025? Because it'll probably be next year you'll be launching them.
So they've got £3,000.
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah. Do they need to go and save some more money?
I would say maybe some of that money could be used to create short form content. I've talked about this on TikTok, and like I said something a bit controversial where I said, don't spend your money on music videos. What you can do is you can spend money on music videos and then cut up that content to create lots of short form content around that particular song that you're doing. So if you can create a music video for like 500 quid and you come up with some really professional looking short form content, maybe it's like a performance of that song, like a performance music video, you know, like the kind of Green Day kind of videos back in the day or whatever, or Blink-182 where they're performing to camera, like that kind of thing. Like, and I always see I see short form content, and I talk to my artists about this as mini music videos. So, you know, I think a lot of like lip sync. I think a lot of like the artist performing to the camera, and like then cutting up. And it's like obviously on socials, it's you want to be cutting up in vertical. So you want a music video really that works in vertical format as well as sort of landscape. So cut up, you know, that music video, and maybe you can do this yourself. You can just get a mate who's like good with an iPhone, or maybe pay a content creator, which is maybe a couple of £100, and just go and create even more of this as well on top of this music video that you do. Just create like around this one song. If it's this one song that you're releasing, just create so much content around it, and just keep posting about it. I mean, like, you know, when you look at like Good Neighbours and Artemis and those kind of artists who have gone from kind of zero to going viral, the amount of content that they would have posted around one song and like a particular hook in a song, like there's so much that they've. So I would just create a bank, like first and foremost, and you can just do this for free as well. You don't need to necessarily waste your budget on doing that, and then just post it. And then if anything. If you get like a little bit of a spark, if you get an organic spark on TikTok or Instagram Reels, then put money behind it to then, you know. So we have a social media girl who works with us at the label, and she was working with an artist called Daydreamers, and this is very much what they were doing. And she was helping them with their strategy, but they were just posting on TikTok and Instagram Reels. In the end, they got a spark on Instagram Reels around their song. And again, it was just posting continuously around one song. And it was like POV, you know, I think like Good Neighbours did this. Like Good Neighbours with their song Home, it was like POV, you find someone who feels like home or something. And it was like tapping into people's emotions. And sometimes you can do that. You can write relatable things as the text to kind of, you know, whilst you have your song playing, soundtracking the whole thing. And then if it sparks and you get like a bit of a viral moment, then put money behind it. And I would just do that, because £3,000 can go a really long way in terms of. So you could literally go massively viral probably off £3,000. I think, like if you have to have enough organic traction first and foremost, and people have to react to it. It's not just like a science where, oh yeah, if you spend £3,000, you're going to go viral. Like there has to be a certain amount of organic traction involved in it. But I would just say, just wait until you have that organic traction and then spend the money. That's what I would do with £3,000, because £3,000 is not a lot. Like a radio plugger is about £2,000. And you could spend, 2/3 of your budget on a radio plugger and realistically get like a couple of radio spins. And that is not going to equate to pretty much anything. So I always say to people, don't spend your money on press and radio and just digital advertising, I would say, when you're and go ham on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. Like you've got to do it yourself as well. You've got to have a DIY sort of self-starter mentality. When I was talking about mentality, I think another thing that artists need is kind of DIY self-starter mentalities, and I do think Gen Z do have that, which is good.
Yeah, going back to what I was saying before, so it's probably they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
There's been a lot. I mean, I've been pushing the don't spend money on a music video. Go and spend money on a vertical. Someone with a nice vertical camera knows how to use it. They've got like a gimbal or something like that, and then take like 4 or 5 sets of changes of clothes and get in the car and then do the lip syncing thing in different. Get a change of clothes, do it in like 3 different backgrounds, and then change your clothes and do the same thing. Like spend a day and get like 16, 17 clips. But there has been people, saying, oh, like the music video is a piece of art. Like, how can you just say that you don't need that anymore? Which is probably what maybe some of the people, when you mentioned it, was a bit controversial.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Yeah, I and again, that's just people being like black or white. Like, it's not one or the other. It's just more like, I can't afford a music video. What should I spend my money on? This is far cheaper and is probably going to get you similar results. What I've seen a few of my mates who do music videos professionally do now is I see them. They've got their rig. They've got their nice, Sony camera, with a nice lens on it, and then they've got like a little bit that sits on top, and they've got just the vertical camera there as well, and they're simultaneously recording everything at once. And they'll sometimes say, okay, right, we've got the bit for the music video, but it's actually where you're standing looks really dope. Can we just do like another cut of you just going like really close to camera, just saying the main hook? And so they're just sort of like, while they're doing the music video, they're getting all this stuff, filming it on the native format, and they're seeing what kind of looks good. And I thought that was probably like a really smart way of doing it. And they say, we'll be like, it's like $5,000 to do a music video, or it's $7,000, and we'll also do all your short form content, because they're kind of doing it. And it's like, they'll do extra takes and they'll kind of put it all together. And so I thought that was like a really good, like best of both worlds type thing. But yeah, if you can't afford that, even a music video.
I would also say to those people who say music video is an art form, like the only reason why music videos exist is because of MTV. That was taking, we talk about taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. That was in the 80s. MTV suddenly became a thing. So that's why major labels and artists started creating music videos. It was because of, it's the same thing. Like TikTok is now a thing. So we are creating short form content because of that. Like, so people attach art around music videos, but it's like they might in 20 years attach this, short form content. Do you know what I mean? Like,
the greatest like short form content videos, and there'll be like a TV show on it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
People to watch them. Yeah, I have to agree with that as well. And also, like, another argument to people are like, I just want to do the music and I don't want to do the content creation, right? Okay, then pay somebody to do the content creation with you. Help them, pay someone to help you set up and script out, like, we're going to go here and we're going to film this. And like, there are agencies that do that. Spend the money doing it. Because that, you could have argued, like you said in the MTV, I just want to be an artist. I don't want to make music videos. But it's like, well, you got to make a music video because MTV is how you get broken. Like, but we're going to pay somebody to do the music video for you because it's a big kind of thing. Again, just change your perspective. It's a similar thing, just in a modern age. Right. So I'm just mindful of time. I think, Is there anything else you wanted to add? I know you mentioned if someone wants to get in contact with you, the email address. If you do want to do any coaching, especially around music stuff, it's STEVIE at AKIRARECORDS.com. Or I'm sure you could go to the record label website and follow your nose on a contact form, and you'll get in cold Stevie too. Anywhere else
you can find me on, you can find me on socials, TikTok, Stevie Red McMinn. I'm on Instagram as Stevie Mount Wolf and Stevie Red McMinn. So yeah, if you want to find me, it's not going to be too difficult. I'm on the internet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure if you Google, you'll get your contact. You're famous enough to just Google, and we'll be able to find you.
Yeah. The one last thing I would say, just on that one point about TikTok, is it's a good idea, and what we often tell our artists to do is batch create, and that's kind of what you were talking about when you work with a content creator. You can basically, because we're telling our artists to post once a day on TikTok. If you go and work with a content creator, and a content creator could just be your mate with a gimbal, like it can be very DIY as well. You don't need to spend money on it necessarily. You can come out with like 50 videos from that one day, and as you say, if you bring a change of clothes, like that's like 50 days worth of content right there, and that's from one day. That's from like 4 or 5 hours of. So these people who are like, I can't show up every day. It's like, well, you can batch create as well. I think that's another thing that's a good idea.
I personally do it myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
I batch create once a month, and then you don't have to do it 12 times a year. It's nice and easy. Yeah, mm-hmm. I agree. Stevie, thank you so much for your time and your insight as well. It's super valuable hearing it from someone who's at the coalface, who's had the experience, who's running a successful record label. So yeah, thank you again for sharing all those stories.
Thank you very much for having me. And it was lovely to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you.